according to a Fox News analyst and a judge, he says that this is illegal. It violates the privacy statute and that prohibits the White House from collecting data and storing it on people who disagree with it. So in other words, they're probably creating an enemies list of anybody who uses free speech against the health care plan that they have and says, well, wait, it's too expensive, or why does it cover illegal aliens, or how come it doesn't cover the criminals? You hear? This is now considered a crime by the Obamaites, and you could wind up on a list and perhaps in a year visited by an acorn thug or a new green thug with a gun who reports only to one of the criminals inside the White House, who was lifted from the gutters of Oakland, for example, and given an official position in the White House to create a brown shirt brigade in the United States of America. The Boxer Rebellion, going back to ancient China, occurred between 1898 and 1901. The Boxer Rebellion, more properly called the Boxer Uprising, or the Righteous Harmony Society movement in Chinese, was a violent anti-foreign, anti-Christian movement by the Righteous Fists of Harmony, or Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists in China. In response to imperialist expansion, growth of cosmopolitan influences, and missionary evangelism, and against the backdrop of state fiscal crisis, natural disasters, and drug addiction, local organizations began to emerge in Shandong in 1898. The Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists, known by foreigners as the Boxers, was a secret society founded in Shandong, located in the North Province of China. Westerners came to call well-trained athletic young men boxers due to the martial arts and calisthenics they practice. So in other words, when Pelosi comments that the people showing up at the town hall meetings are wearing white shirts and ties, and they must be therefore dangerous, she is in very, very wonderful company. So very interesting what's going on. Those who do not know their history are condemned to repeat it, you see, and that's why we must pay very close attention to the great Spanish writer. Notice I don't call him Hispanic. He was Spanish. His name was Santayana. I had to read him in college. Today, the only Santayana that anyone knows is probably a rock and roll musician from the 1980s. The illiterate adult is tragically handicapped, for he is unable to read the simplest direction or to write his name. Now, this is interesting stuff. This is the citizenship book that my deceased grandmother had to read in order to qualify for her citizenship examination. She wanted to be an American. She wanted to write English. She wanted to be able to understand common English. So she read this little book put out by the State Department of Education in Albany, New York, Supervisor of Immigrant Education. And it says the illiterate adult is tragically handicapped, for he is unable to read the simplest direction or to write his name. Suitable teaching material for illiterate adults is scarce. It reads, for most of the textbooks on the market are written for the literate non-English speaking foreigner, and are consequently altogether too difficult for the first steps in acquiring a new and difficult language. This excellent little book, therefore, will be a boon to many a teacher in this field who is trying to lead adult pupils into the path of enlightenment and richer living, in other words, to become an American. And yet we have a president who says America is not enlightened. America did not grant tens of millions of people enlightenment and a richer life. He's president, but he still plays the race card. He's president, but he still claims he's an oppressed minority. So when there was an altercation between a troublesome professor who has gotten everything in his life by screaming race in a crowded nation up at Harvard, the president immediately in a knee-jerk reaction took the side of the race baiter against the white cop. It was such an embarrassment for Barack Hussein Obama that he had to invite the two of them to the White House for a beer. And so, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, times change, times don't change. The only thing that changes now is that you don't recognize that we have a dictator in the making and that you still have the power. You have all the power, and you can stop him. Many of you are doing it. You're going to town hall meetings and you're shouting at these little Bolsheviks called congressmen, senators, state senators, state legislators, and you're shocking them with the truth of reality. You are the voter. They never met you.
Savage. Michael Savage.
Afternoons 3 to 7.
On Talk 910 KNEW.
And online at 910knew.com.
Coming up next, from San Fran Freak Show, the Savage Nation. from Talk 910 KNEW.
On the air, online, and on the go. This is Talk 910 KNEW.
Warning. The Michael Savage Show contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Here is Michael Savage.
Friday on the Savage Nation. Remember when Bush was in power, and I was an early and consistent critic of Bush. In fact, I called him a fiscal socialist a year before people realized what he was doing to this country. Do you remember when there were organized protests in Congress by groups such as Code Pink and all the leftists who would break up meetings and go into Congress? Do you remember how the media would laud them? Do you remember how the media would make them into heroes? Well, now that non-organized protests are occurring, now that ordinary Americans are standing up to the gangsters who have hijacked America, the vermin in the media are calling them things such as Nazis. They're claiming that they are organized by conservative think tanks. They are saying that they're organized by anti-tax Tea Party sympathizers. They say they're organized by the insurance companies. And so, as I've told you before, there has long been a government media complex in the United States of America. Right now, the government media complex, 99.9% of which is Bolshevik or Leninist or Marxist, whichever you prefer. All three would apply. They are calling you, the average American, who are finally standing up to these people, meaning your fraudulent gangster congressman or senator who is trying to rob you of everything your children will make. First they nationalized the banks. Then they gave money to their friends on Wall Street. Hank Paulson, for example, robbed hundreds of billions of dollars in TARP funds, in my opinion, and gave them to his friends on Wall Street, much of which is not accounted for. There's no disclosure of where the money went. Many of the people on Wall Street who bankrupted America have now profited from the bankruptcy. They then nationalized the automobile industry, destroying one of America's greatest corporations, General Motors. They are now trying to nationalize health care in America and make it government medicine, and the people have said enough is enough. You're not going to do it. And what do their friends in the media, the low-paid D students known as journalists, do? They call them rowdy. They call them Nazi. They call them fascists for standing up to the true fascists in the United States of America. So understand what's going on in this country and understand what your battle really is and what you have to do. For example, in California, the radical leftists are holding meetings, and the protesters are going there and they're screaming, "This is America. What's wrong with profit?" And the leftist representatives are saying, "Oh, my God, we've never seen anything like this." So the Democrat National Committee, the DNC, calls the protesters mobs. They ask Democrats to make lists of people who are showing up at the meetings. They ask Democrats to write down anything that occurs on the Internet or on talk radio, I imagine, and make notes of the individuals who are disseminating the truth so that they can then be possibly visited by an acorn thug with a club somewhere down the line when Obama gets his private personal security force that answers only to him. Right? 1-800-449-8255 is the Savage Nation. MichaelSavage.com is the website. And speaking of which, we've linked up some amazing stories on the website today. Let me point out one of them right now because it's so good. I have to download it. It's a little slow. You know, we get 1.4 million viewers a month on michaelsavage.com. And that represents about 8% of my weekly. Well, I get about 8 to 10 million weekly listeners on the Savage Nation, third largest show in the country, and the website gets about 1.4 million viewers a month. So it's a significant audience. So on the right side of the website, I hope it's still up. I hope it hasn't been removed. I can't download it. There's a picture of Al Franken in the place of a horse's behind, representing the word obotomy or obotomize, which I coined yesterday on the show. I think it was hilarious that the Democrats would take this failed comedian and use him to introduce Judge Sotomayor as she was anointed to the Supreme Court. I thought it was hilarious. It was a double insult. First, they pick an unqualified woman and put her on the Supreme Court simply because she was Hispanic and a woman. And I say that with absolute clarity and no fear for one reason. Because none of you listening to this show could cite one legal paper written by Sotomayor that you can remember. She has not written anything that will ever be remembered in the history of the law.